you wake to the reek of a city dying. Smoke crawls through every street of Rome, thick and bitter, carrying the taste of scorched stone and burning flesh. It scratches at your throat, fills your eyes with a haze that makes the world shimmer like a fever dream. The sky above is not sky at all, but a ceiling of black ash, pressing down with the weight of suffocation. The smell is more than fire, it is betrayal. Temples collapse while statues melt into grotesque shapes, as if the gods themselves are mocked in their own shrines. Homes turn to skeletons of wood and dust. Somewhere, voices cry out, but the smoke swallows them whole, leaving only silence between the crackle of flames. You ask yourself, what survives when a city burns? Stones? Stories? Or just the shame of knowing you could do nothing as history itself turned to cinders? And still, the fire is only the surface. Beneath the ashes lies something darker, waiting to be remembered. For centuries, Rome dazzled the world with its wealth, armies, and vast empire. To outsiders, it appeared unstoppable, an eternal city built on strength and order. Yet beneath this golden mask, cracks had already begun to form. The empire stretched too far, its borders endless and vulnerable. Maintaining legions across distant lands drained resources. Inside Rome, greed and corruption seeped into the Senate, weakening the very institution that once gave the Republic its stability. The ordinary people, who once felt pride in Rome's victories, began to feel the weight of heavy taxes and widening inequality. Wealth concentrated in the hands of elites, while peasants and soldiers struggled. Political rivals used bribes, lies, and violence to climb to power. This tension simmered quietly, like pressure beneath the earth. From the outside, Rome still glittered. But behind the grandeur, its foundations were weakening. The empire had grown too large, too proud, and too divided, setting the stage for storms that would soon shake the world's greatest power. As Rome expanded, its appetite grew insatiable. Conquered lands poured treasures, slaves, and exotic luxuries into the capital. Banquets overflowed with delicacies, senators reclined in marble halls, and gold glittered on every corner of the empire's elite. But this feast came at a cost, one that ordinary Romans and the conquered paid in silence. While the rich drowned in excess, the poor filled the streets, surviving on crumbs. Gladiatorial games and spectacles distracted the masses, bread and blood keeping unrest at bay. Behind the laughter of feasts and the roar of arenas, shadows spread. Violence became entertainment, and cruelty a casual habit of daily life. The empire fed not only on wealth, but on people. Slaves worked Rome's fields, mines, and homes, their suffering hidden beneath the glow of prosperity. What appeared as triumph was in truth a hunger that could never be satisfied. Rome devoured the world, yet in doing so, began to consume itself. In the heart of Rome, beneath towering stone arches, the Colosseum roared with life. Tens of thousands packed the stands, their cheers shaking the ground as gladiators clashed in brutal combat. Blood spilled across the sand, turning death into spectacle. For the people, it was more than entertainment. It was escape from hunger, poverty, and the weight of empire. For rulers, it was a tool. Keep the crowd fed with bread, dazzled with violence, and they would forget their misery. Yet the games revealed more than they concealed. Rome's hunger for blood mirrored its politics, power seized through betrayal, ambition ending in daggers. The same brutality that thrilled the masses poisoned the Senate halls and military camps. The Colosseum became a symbol not of strength, but of decay, an empire addicted to violence, consuming itself for applause. Every cheer for death echoed Rome's future. The sand washed clean after each contest, but the stain on the empire's soul only deepened. Rome's empire was built on the strength of its legions, disciplined, relentless, and feared across the world. Their march carved new provinces into the map, their victories feeding Rome's pride. But as the empire stretched farther, these same legions became a burden too heavy to carry. Maintaining armies on distant frontiers drained Rome's treasury, while constant campaigns demanded more men, more weapons, and more gold. Loyalty, once sworn to the Republic, shifted dangerously toward individual generals who promised wealth and glory. Ambitious commanders used their legions as private armies, bending soldiers to their own ambitions. Civil wars erupted, brother against brother, as Rome's might turned inward. The empire that had conquered nations now fought itself, bleeding resources and trust. Soldiers returning from endless wars found little reward, while veterans grew restless and bitter. The legions, Rome's sword and shield, had become its greatest weight, dragging the empire toward collapse. At Rome's borders, the so-called barbarians waited Germanic tribes, Goths, Vandals, and countless others. For centuries, Rome had beaten them back with iron discipline, but as the empire weakened, these once distant threats pressed harder against its fragile defenses. The frontier was too vast, the soldiers too few, and the treasury too empty to hold the line. Some tribes came not only as invaders, but as desperate migrants fleeing hunger, war, or colder lands. Rome, once proud, was forced to rely on these very outsiders, hiring them as mercenaries to defend the empire. Yet loyalty bought with coin was fragile, and many who fought for Rome would later turn their blades against it. Each raid carved deeper wounds into the empire's pride. Towns were burned, trade routes shattered, and fear spread across the provinces. Rome, once the terror of the world, now trembled before those it had long dismissed as savages. The cracks in its golden mask had widened into open fractures, and the storm at its gates could no longer be ignored. If enemies threatened Rome from the outside, betrayal corroded it from within. Rival generals, senators, and emperors turned against one another, each grasping for the empire's throne. Civil wars became a grim pattern, brothers spilling the blood of brother, allies becoming assassins, and loyalty shifting with the promise of power. The Senate, once the heart of Roman governance, became a theater of intrigue. Bribes and plots replaced debate, while daggers replaced votes. Assassinations struck down rulers before they could steady the empire, leaving chaos in their wake. Armies marched not against foreign foes, but against fellow Romans, tearing apart the land they were sworn to protect. Every victory in these internal wars was hollow, leaving Rome weaker, poorer, and more divided. The empire devoured itself with treachery, each knife in the dark cutting deeper into its foundations. Rome's strength had always been unity, but now unity was lost, replaced by ambition, mistrust, and endless blood. Religion, once a pillar of Rome's unity, became another battlefield for power. In its early days, Rome had thrived by absorbing the gods of conquered peoples, weaving them into a vast tapestry of belief. But as the empire strained, faith itself turned divisive. Old traditions clashed with rising new religions, tearing at the fragile bonds that held society together. Some emperors sought to make themselves divine, demanding worship as gods in human form. Others persecuted religious groups to secure loyalty, using fear instead of reverence. The spread of Christianity offered hope to the oppressed, but it also deepened Rome's fractures, turning faith into a matter of politics as much as the soul. Instead of binding Rome together, religion now poisoned its heart. Priests and emperors wielded faith as a weapon, while the people searched for answers in the shadows of temples. The empire that once believed itself eternal no longer shared a common creed. Its spirit, like its body, was splintering. Rome's cities, once alive with trade, culture, and ambition, began to wither from within. Streets that had bustled with merchants and artisans grew empty as economic strain tightened its grip. Heavy taxes crushed farmers and craftsmen, forcing many to abandon their lands and homes. The empire's wealth no longer flowed from the people, it drained them dry. Markets that once overflowed with goods now echoed with scarcity. Vast estates owned by elites replaced small farms, while peasants sank into poverty or fled to survive. In the cities, grandeur masked decay. Marble facades stood tall, but behind them lurked hunger, disease, and unrest. As the economy collapsed, so too did the bond between citizen and empire. Once proud to call themselves Roman, many now saw the empire as a burden rather than a blessing. The hollowing of Rome's cities mirrored the hollowing of its spirit. What had been the heart of civilization was now an empty shell, crumbling under the weight of its own neglect. Though Rome's walls crumbled and its emperors fell, the empire did not truly vanish. Its legions no longer marched, yet its laws, language, and culture endured, shaping the world that followed. The idea of Rome became larger than Rome itself, carried in the Latin tongue, in the codes of justice, in the stones of cities built in its image. When the Western Empire collapsed, the eastern half, Byzantium, kept the flame alive for centuries more, calling itself Roman long after the old capital lay in ruins. Even when that too fell, kings and empires across Europe claimed Rome's legacy, crowning themselves heirs to its eternal throne. In truth, Rome never fully died. It lived on in the faiths that spread through its lands, in the roads that stitched nations together, and in the dream of order rising from chaos. The empire that once ruled the known world dissolved in body, but in spirit it became immortal, an echo that still shapes civilization today. Rome may belong to history, but its story is a mirror held up to our own age. Just as Rome once believed itself eternal, powerful nations today see their strength as unshakable. Yet the cracks that weaken the empire, economic strain, political division, corruption, endless wars, and the widening gap between rich and poor still echo in our world. We, too, live amid dazzling wealth and technological marvels, even as unrest stirs beneath the surface. Like Rome, we distract ourselves with spectacle, while shadows gather at the edges of our societies. The collapse of Rome was not sudden. It was the slow erosion of trust, unity, and vision until the world's greatest power stood hollow, unable to defend itself. Rome teaches us that no empire, no nation, no civilization is invincible. Its fall is not only a warning, but a question. Will we repeat its mistakes or learn from its fate? In the ruins of Rome, we see not just the past, but a possible reflection of our future. The Roman Empire may lie in ruins, but its ashes still whisper across time. In the crumbled stones of its forums, in the broken arches of aqueducts, in the silent Colosseum where crowds once roared, we hear the echoes of a civilization that believed itself eternal. Its fall reminds us that power is fragile, and that every empire, no matter how vast, carries within it the seeds of its own decline. Yet Rome's ashes do more than warn, they teach. From its laws came justice, from its roads came connection, from its language came poetry and thought. Even in its destruction, Rome shaped the future. The empire that collapsed also planted the foundations of the modern world. The lesson of Rome is not only one of loss, but of legacy. Its greatness was not destroyed, it was transformed, scattered into the civilizations that followed. The empire died, but its voice endures. And if we listen closely, we can still hear it, urging us to remember, to reflect, and to endure.